Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I'm here today with Shay Haddow. Shay Haddow is an expert coach and speaker on confidence and mindset for female athletes. Having worked with hundreds of youth female athletes and college teams from across the country, she's empowered girl athletes to build unshakable confidence so they can live and play to their fullest potential. As the host of the Alpha Girl Confidence podcast and author of She the Confident, Shay is widely regarded for her insights on confidence and mindset by parents and coaches around the country. After overcoming her own struggles with confidence throughout her club and collegiate soccer career, Shay knew that it was her life's purpose to provide female athletes with the mentorship that she wished she had when she was younger. Shay has dedicated her life to empowering female athletes of all ages to uncover their greatest superpower of all, allowing them to break free from their limitations and achieve their biggest dreams on and off the field or court. Today was a great conversation about building confidence. We talked about ways to respond to your failures and mistakes from a place of power, how embracing failure is actually the best way to start winning, and 5 actions to instill a bulletproof mindset and build unshakable confidence, how visualization and affirmations play a huge role to building confidence and achieving our dream goals, why we should rid ourselves of the need to be perfect and focus on progress instead. And we talked a lot about the imposter syndrome. Who am I to do this? The feeling of not enoughness, that we're not enough, we're not good enough, or somebody's going to find us out, that we weren't as good as we seem to be, that we're, a fake, or who am I to do this? All the things. This was such a good conversation. Tune in. We talked about so much more. It's power packed. And check out Shay's book, She the Confident. And she also has a course coming up, which I think if you have a problem with confidence, you might want to check that out. Or if you're just a female athlete and you need to build confidence in your game. So good today. So without further ado, let's dive into this episode. I am so excited to welcome Shay Haddow to the Sister of Sweat today.
Thanks, Linda. I'm super excited to be here and have an awesome conversation.
I have been diving into Shay's book because, well, she talks about confidence, which is what I'm all about. All the way from my years of starting my first little tiny gym, I said my mission statement was I wanted to build women's self-confidence and self-esteem through building health. And so I'm really excited to dive into all mental aspects with you today. And how did you become this confident person? Have you always been confident, or is this a skill you've learned?
It's definitely a skill that I've learned. And that's the reason why I do it, is because when I was a teenager, or actually a preteen, I was not confident at all. I got injured when I was 12, had a really bad injury, tore my ACL in soccer. And from that moment on, I really struggled with confidence all throughout my youth career, all throughout my college career. And so it's really the reason why I do what I do now, to really serve as a mentor for girls who are struggling, because there's a lot of girls who, especially teenagers, that are struggling with confidence at one point or another. And so it's definitely a skill that I've learned, and a skill that I'm continuing to try and get better and better at every single day.
So when I was diving in your book, because I just have to, when somebody's written a book, I'm like, oh gosh, I love books. I've always loved them since high school, because my grandmother was a literary teacher, English and Latin. And she is the one that actually taught me how to study. So back then, it was read lots of books, but studying, I didn't really get it. So she taught me how to get books absorbed in a short amount of time. And I'm a speed reader. So I
That's
almost had your
awesome.
book done before we started today. So I'm really excited to dive into the topic. And I know when you had, you were having issues with your knee, I would like to kind of dive into the whole aspect of injury, because I really, I've had several myself as a competitive athlete. I know that it really messes with your head, your confidence, so many things. Can you
Yeah.
address some of these and help us out today? Because I know someone listening will benefit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the physical pain and everything is tough, but the hardest thing for me was definitely the mental and emotional aspect of being injured, right? So as an athlete, I think one of the hardest thing is, sitting on the sidelines, seeing your teammates having fun, seeing your teammates getting better, and you're just kind of sitting there as a bystander. And so that can be hard on confidence, kind of realizing that, hey, I'm getting so behind in this and getting so behind and out of shape, and like, when am I going to get back? And then the other thing too is when you actually are healthy again, it was really hard for me, at least, to be able to trust my body again and to know that, hey, Shay, like, you're okay, you're ready to play, because I was so scared that I was going to get re-injured again. So that was
Right.
a
That's like the
total,
biggest fear.
yeah, that was a total mind bender. Was just like, I never started, like, I never played full out because I was so worried about getting hurt again. I was always holding back. I was hesitating. I was constantly thinking about, oh, what if I get injured again? And the last thing I wanted was to go through that whole 9-month process. So I think that for a lot of athletes, regardless of age, is one of the hardest things, is getting back on the field or the court, or whatever you do, and knowing that your body is strong, because that process is like, can be a really long process. So having to go through that and work up your body, not only your physical strength but your mental strength, is huge when it comes to injuries.
And I think like you're hitting a lot of things here, because I can relate that to somebody just being overweight and out of shape, coming to work out after 8 years of nothing, and facing themselves, kind of like how you probably had to face yourself on the soccer field,
Yeah.
or somebody, if they play basketball, they have to face themselves on the basketball court, or a football player, or whatever it is you do. You're having to really face your, I don't know if I want to say vulnerabilities.
Yeah, totally.
And it can be hard, because it's like you compare yourself to this person that you were before the injury, and you're afraid to push that hard, but you're also kind of like mad at yourself because you're not where you were before. So it's a struggle. How can we get out of this mindset struggle that we're having when we have an injury?
Well, I love how you actually brought up comparison, because that's a huge thing. Whether it's obviously we're comparing ourselves to other people that are in it, but I love how you said you compare yourself to who you were before your injury. And for me, I was a totally different player, because yeah, so I lost all of my speed. I don't know if it was because of the way they did the surgery or what happened, but I started to compare myself from who I was before to the
Right.
player I was now. And I just beat myself up. It was the
Absolutely.
negative thoughts, it was, you're not good enough, why aren't you as fast as you used to be? And it was really hard, because I honestly became like my own bully in a sense. And so
Yes, your own bully in your
yeah,
head.
I was my own bully. And that's, I think, the first thing when it comes to not only recovering from injury, but becoming more confident and improving your mindset in general, is it all starts with your thoughts, right? If you're talking to yourself like you don't love yourself, it's going to be really hard for you to overcome that injury and become confident. So I would say that's the first thing, in that process, is you really have to give yourself grace and not compare yourself to where you were, because you know what, you're probably going to be a different player. You're probably going to be a different person, and that's okay. And just being okay with that and forgiving yourself a little bit.
I love that. So that's so good. And I know I've had, actually, if she's listening, she'll know who I'm talking about, but I won't call her now. But she is a Hall of Fame basketball player, and she was holding herself back. Now she's like in amazing shape, but she had, this terrible knee surgery. It didn't work out too well. She fell backwards, and she didn't want to go back to her doctor because she was comparing the new, where she was now to where she was then. And there's sometimes we feel this shame, or we're embarrassed, or whatever, that we're not this perfect version of ourselves, and we feel like we're this lesser version of ourselves. And so when we're so focused on that, we can't see who we are right now in this very moment, and how we can succeed, push forward, pick the ball back up, and move forward differently. Maybe it isn't going to be the same way.
Yeah, I love that, because a lot of the time we are living either in, thinking about our past, or we're thinking about our future, and we're not fully living into the moment and who we are now. And for me, it was like, I was really hard on myself partly. And like you said, maybe embarrassed or ashamed, because I did gain some weight during that time. I wasn't obviously working out, and I gained some weight. And so my body image started to change a little bit at that, very vital age of 13 as well. So that was another tough part of it.
Yeah. And I just think we're so hard on ourselves, and we're focused on beating ourselves up instead of building ourselves up, which is what we truly need. And I think you have some great tools, as I was reading in your toolbox today. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we're going to get to the tools for confidence in a little bit. What I want to talk about is, so many people feel like they aren't good enough. We suffer from this not enoughness so much, or this imposter syndrome. And why is this thing we're telling ourselves that we're not good enough a myth, and how can we dispel this?
Well, I think that's the first thing you have to understand, is that it absolutely is a myth, right? So I love how you said that, because if we believe the thoughts and the stories we tell ourselves, then we're going to live that way. We're going to let that become part of our story. So really the first thing is like you said, is you have to understand that the thoughts and the stories that you've told yourself, or that maybe other people have told you, they are absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. And once you can start to realize that those negative thoughts and those limiting beliefs are not true, you can then go on and, empower yourself in new ways by choosing new thoughts, by choosing new beliefs, and by really rewriting your story. Because I always say we all have a story, and we are the authors of our own story. No one else can change our story but us. So what is your story going to be like? If you believe those negative things, that's how your story is going to be. So we have to start to learn to dispel the myths by looking at the facts and asking ourselves, is this really true? Getting a yes or no answer there. Most of the time, the answer is going to be no. Then from there, it's okay, what's a new, truthful, empowering belief that or thought that I can then go on and start to live?
Yeah. And I mean, if you believe, like, if I love this from my coach, Kathy Savage, but she would say, if someone calls you a pineapple, are you going to be like, what are you saying? I'm not a pineapple. Like, but that's how crazy some of the things people say to us really, truly are. And if we carry this, we actually from childhood could carry these beliefs and believe what this person said about us or to us. And if you believe it, then it's true. But if you see, that's how powerful your beliefs are. And we were just talking about this today in boot camp. And I remember one time thinking, I have hearing aids. I don't want to drop my hearing aids in the toilet. I don't want to drop my hearing aids in the toilet. What do you think happened?
You dropped them in the toilet.
Heck yeah, because what was my focus?
Not dropping them.
I was negative. I don't want to. I don't want to. I was focused so hard on the hearing aids not falling in, they fell in. So your brain is so, and it's so powerful. It's just like so powerful what you believe. And I know I've said this in another episode, but medical students studying a disease, you know, in the second year start getting the symptoms of the disease they're studying. So like they really start getting these symptoms. So that tells you how powerful your beliefs are.
It really is. It really is. I love how you were talking about your hearing aids, and it really is like where you put your attention is where your energy is going to flow. And our subconscious mind really picks up on, what you're saying. So how you're saying and those little tweaks, and instead of saying I don't want to drop my hearing aids, it's like what can we say instead to kind of shift that and kind of implant that in our subconscious mind instead of the negative.
And I really just to reiterate beliefs, because I think if you can realize how powerful the words of your mouth and what you speak are, because you're listening and you're also speaking when you don't even say a word, you're speaking inside your head. If you can realize how powerful changing that channel to a more powerful thought process is, you'd change it right now. You would alter everything
Yeah.
to change those beliefs in your head. And I know you have some powerful tools for helping people with, identifying the negative thought and rewiring it. Can you tell everybody some of these tools and share them?
Yeah. So, as far as whether it's rewiring kind of these negative thoughts or negative beliefs, the first step is always going to be awareness. So, a lot of the time with our negative thoughts, they're so automatic that we aren't always aware that they're happening because they're just there. Right. When something's there all the time, we kind of forget it's there. So, really like stopping and acknowledging your negative thoughts. When you acknowledge them, you're aware of them, and when you're aware of them, then you can begin to question them, kind of like we talked about. So questioning that and asking yourself, like, where did this thought come from? And is this true? Is this serving me? If the answer is no, then number three is let's create this new empowering thought that I can then start to believe. And once you start to have these new thoughts, it's not like the goal is to stop your negative thoughts or to never have them come in, because that's not realistic. Like we're always going to have these negative thoughts. So it's about what you do with the negative thought. It's about your response to the negative thought. So when that negative thought comes in, acknowledge it, say, hey, thanks for being here, but I actually don't need you. And instead, I'm going to think this new thought instead. So we're just basically replacing the negative thought with a positive thought. And then from there is going a step further and actually living and believing that new powerful thought. Because if we just think the thought, we need to actually put it into action as if it were true, or as if we really start to believe that positive thought. So that's how kind of the process of how you can go from letting those negative thoughts run your life to then being more aware of them and choosing positive thoughts, because we have the choice. We have the choice. And the more you do that, the more often those positive thoughts will substitute in for those negative thoughts.
Well, and I really believe just speaking something out and I'm going to rock this.
Yeah.
I'm going to sweep this. I'm going, I've got this. And when you're tired, I'm not tired. Like speaking it out like that, it's so weird, but you feel weird doing it because you're like, because it's so confident. But
Yeah.
it actually ends up happening more often than not that you follow suit with what you're speaking out loud.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact numbers on this. I think I heard it on a podcast a while back. But when you think a thought, when you actually say it out loud, it's like 10 times more powerful when you say it out loud versus when you just keep it in. So you're right, like saying it out loud is so powerful, but also on the flip side, thinking or saying a negative thought out loud is even more powerful.
It's so powerful. I don't know if you do yoga, Shay, but I was at this Yoga Fit conference, and some of the things, because I had finished everything and I was getting my 200 hours or whatever. It's like the Yoga Alliance. Were kind of a little woo-woo for me, okay? This Midwestern girl from Ohio.
Um, yeah.
And I was kind of like, I don't know about that. And they did this thing called muscle testing. And we had to put our arms, you probably know what I'm talking about, our arms out and close our eyes. And what they did this time was more, it was very convincing. It was about the positive thought, the negative thought. So I had to have a negative thought, speak it out, and the lady then tries to push my arms down, and I'm strong, and especially then with no injuries, and she just pushed it right down on the negative, no problem. But when I had the positive thought, she couldn't push it down, and I was like, wow, that's like,
Wow.
that is so powerful, just to realize how having that more glass half full mentality makes you stronger.
That's amazing. I love that you shared that, because when I don't do a lot of in-person, engagements right now, but when I do, I'm totally going to use that as kind of like the icebreaker. I think that's really, really powerful to literally like see it in action, see it improving your physical strength. That's pretty
And it's
cool.
so funny because I was such a freaking skeptic. So, you know what I'm saying? So that
Yep.
makes it even more. I'm like,
Yep.
yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
What is this woo woo thing? Like,
Yep. Love it.
oh my gosh. And I can be that. I'm very practical in some ways. So,
Mhm.
from that mindset, then sometimes it's kind of like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But I also want to take a step deeper into this, because I was reading in your book that you believe in visualization, and how do you do it so that people that aren't used to doing it can get an idea? I do it all the time, but
Yep.
how can people visualize something? What is a process for them to visualize their dreams?
So first of all, realize that visualization doesn't need to be, you don't need to light a candle and some incense, and you don't have to, do all of that. It can be very, very simple. So how I do, I actually did it this morning. I try to do it along with meditation, a couple every day. But I just sit down or I lay down, take a couple deep breaths. So the first thing for me is I have to get really centered in my body. Take a couple really deep breaths to get really present in my body and kind of go from thinking outside of myself to then coming inside of myself. So that's the first step. And then for me, it's starting with my senses. So what am I in my visualization? What am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I smelling? What am I feeling? I'm losing one or the other, but the five senses, right? So the reason why we want to get into our senses is because the more realistic you make it, like the more it's actually going to work, like the more real it'll be when it comes to fruition, right? So really getting super specific with your senses that are going on in that moment. And then from there, so like for a sport, for example, imagine yourself doing the skills that you want to do in your sport. And I don't visualize like that anymore because I don't play a sport. So for me, I'll visualize like what I want my life to look like, my dream house on the coast in Monterey. I'll visualize that. I'll visualize the what I'm hearing, the ocean, the people walking along the beach. Like I will just try to get in really deep detail with, again, my senses and like the feeling in the conversation that is going on in that moment. So for sport, I break it down into what does your pregame look like, your warm-ups, visualize that, then visualize your in-game, and then visualize your post-game. But again, I use it for literally everything, whether it's my big dreams, whether it's that I'm nervous to go fly on a plane, whether it's, a conversation like this or a presentation or a speech. So I'll use it anytime where I want to feel confident and just have really good results in whatever I'm doing.
When I tore my ACL,
Mm.
that was my first injury.
Uh,
And that was in 2006. The doctor said, if you have this surgery, you'll be able to do your championship. And that was like in 4.5 or 5 months. Right. And then they're like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, oh, but you said, and I
Yeah.
was holding them to it. So I just remember that even though I couldn't practice, this is for like fitness competition, I couldn't practice my routine. I already knew it by heart because I had been practicing before I tore my ACL. So I memorized it and I would listen to the music and I would visualize myself doing it, you know?
Yeah.
And so for actually it was 4.5 months, I competed for the championship. I won the Masters championship. And I don't even remember that I was able to do it very long before that actual show.
Wow.
And so I won my championship. And I really think it was because of this visualizing the routine, visualizing the music, just visualizing, like I would do it almost daily.
Yep.
And I just think it's very strong. Or if you know, like with my gym, I kept speaking about my gym, like how it was going to be way before any of this stuff ever happened. Some of the people that have known me way back when I was in my little studio would come to the new one and be like, oh my goodness, she did do all those things she said she was going to do.
I
But
love it.
it's just that it's that visually seeing it, visualizing it. And then when we got into the new space, and now we just added additional during COVID, I would say, as I was touring people around, how we were going to have this additional space and how it was going to be. And I was speaking it into existence. So I had
Yeah.
no idea that I was really going to do that. It seems so big. So
Yeah.
I just think like when you speak the goals out, it brings them, I think visually you can see them, but also then other people heard you do that, which kind of makes you more accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And like injury, right? When you're injured, like visualization is one of the best tools you can use to get back help. Like for you, like you got back help, that's a really short amount of time to come back from an ACL injury. So like using that to not only like get you back physically healthy, but also when you do get back is like knowing, like having that confidence that you are ready. And for me, visualization was the very first thing that I ever did to help me with my confidence when I was in college. It was the very first thing I ever did. And it really changed everything for me. It changed the way I played. It changed. I used to get really nervous. I used to get anxiety around that. And so it really changed not only how I played, but my mental state around games as well.
Yeah, I just really think you can't say enough about having a vision.
Yeah.
Number one, a
Yeah.
vision. If you have a vision of what you want, then you can visualize.
Yes. And if you
So,
can visualize it, it's there for you.
right. If you can see it, you can achieve it. I think when you can see yourself there, and if you can't at first, you might have to work on it a little bit. What are some positive affirmations? How can people create them and how should they use them?
So affirmations, I do them every single morning. I have this one affirmation that I have every single morning. But I would use them every single day. You don't have to use multiple a day. You can have like for me, I have one go-to every day. But they're very, very powerful, just like we're talking about. Because when you start to use affirmations, you literally start to rewire your brain and you start to rewire how you think about yourself. So whether it's writing them down and then obviously speaking it out loud. So write some post-it notes, put it in your shower, put it on your mirror, have it somewhere where you can see it every single day so that it's always in the back of your mind. And then when you write it is really speaking it out loud because we talked about, it's so much more powerful when you speak it out loud. So for me, affirmations also, isn't it about just like, I am strong. I am confident. It's not just that, but it's like what I want my future to be as if I'm already
You can
living it.
future cast,
You can
kind of.
future cast. Yeah. So I just had a call with one of my girls and she wants to be an Olympic figure skater. So her affirmation is I am an Olympic figure skater. Obviously she's not now, but that's her affirmation is I am an Olympic figure skater. So you can future cast. I am a millionaire. I am the most successful person to ever be in my field, like whatever that looks like for you, but using your affirmations as yes, like as like I am, fill in the blank with an adjective, but also future casting your affirmations is really powerful.
And just showing up as what you want to be before you become it
Yeah.
is huge. It's huge. I mean, if you have to swim with the big fish to get there and you feel a little bit intimidated because you have this whole I'm not enoughness thing going on in your mind, swimming with the big fish make you kind of swim faster. And
Yep.
so even if it feels a little intimidating and you start out with not enoughness, when you look back, you'll see how better you're swimming, you know?
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes when you're in the thick of it and you don't really always notice how much progress you've made. But when you can step back and like kind of take a step back and look at it from a different perspective, you're like, wow, like I really had a lot of progress in this and I didn't always realize it. So always take a step back when you're working towards your goals and reflect on the progress you've made, even if you don't totally reach your goals. Like it's still a great way to improve your confidence just by looking back at that.
I think, in sports or anything competitive, you're surrounded by greatness. There's always greatness. You're always surrounded by somebody better than you or somebody not as good. And that's why the comparison has to go. Because when you're comparing yourself, you're not focusing on what you should actually be doing. And if you start just trying to achieve better and better, results, you're going to look back at that time. Like I had this moment in my studio because I was always, I mean, when I did fitness, let me just say, I didn't start till I was 40. I was not a gymnast. I was not a dancer. I was not a ballerina. Let's just say. And I'm not going to be one anytime
Right.
soon. But I learned how to do all of these strength moves and gymnastics, and I did dance. I did all this stuff. I'm just saying,
Mm.
but we had silver medalists from the Olympics, and we had people that were Circus Olay performers, and then there was me. But what I'm saying about this is that I could have been stuck in that. And I remember one day I said to myself, well, they've been performing since they were 3. I started
Yeah.
at 40. I'm going to give
Right.
myself some time here to start doing well. And my client was looking up at my picture where I was on one, in the planche in one hand and the other arm in the air and your legs out.
Yep.
And she said, are you on one arm? Are you suspended on one arm? I'm like, yeah. She said, how old were you there? I'm like 55. That's, I said, I actually probably perfected the move about that age.
That's
So
awesome.
then I realized,
Yeah.
it isn't a normal thing.
Yeah.
And it was a cool thing. You know what I mean? But at the time, I'm competing with all of these big fish. You
Yep.
might not recognize that what you're doing is pretty special and it's pretty cool. And so if you're stuck in the comparison, so do what I did, give yourself some grace and some
Yep.
time to get better at what you're trying to attempt.
Yep. And you can't compare your chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 20, right? Like you're in totally different spots. So it's like and when you said like when you are comparing yourself, you're focusing not on yourself. And so I always like to, like there's this famous picture with Michael Phelps, and I can't remember who he's swimming against, and maybe the 2008 Olympics. I can't remember, but there's a picture of Michael Phelps next to another swimmer, and the other swimmer, he was about to win, but in the picture, the other swimmer is turned over. He's looking at Michael Phelps, and Michael Phelps is zoned in on the finish line. And guess who ended up winning? Michael Phelps. Like he came from behind because he was focused on himself. And this other swimmer took the energy and the focus off of himself and turned it on to Michael Phelps. And he ended up losing gold medal.
I love, love, love that you're saying that, because I think that is such a good point, because my coach said to me, and I always remember this, don't take anybody, you're not taking anybody else up on stage with you. It's just you. So just do you. And so don't take them like in your game. Don't take another player in your head. Don't let them pay, don't give them free rent there.
Yeah.
Right. And like, if you're focusing on your game and you're not worrying about everybody else's game, you're going to play so much better. Like your game, like my game on the stage. What was my game? I was really great at strength moves. So if I'm playing my game, then I'm going to do so much better at that. And I still remember my coach again, Kathy Savage, she says, the day I did me, and I didn't do all these things that everybody was always wanting me to do. I knew what I was good at, and I just did that. She was like, what the F was that? She was because it shocked her. And she's like, I didn't know you had that in you.
Yeah.
And then I won a routine round that year. So it was over people that were so much, better at gymnastics,
Right.
better at dance, but they weren't good at what I was doing. Right. It just makes sense.
Yeah, because we only have so much mental energy and focus. So why spend it on looking at someone else and thinking about what they're doing? Because when you do that, your energy is going to run out and you're only going to have so much for yourself. So we have to give full energy to ourselves and stop worrying about what everyone else is doing. Because as soon as you do that, like there goes all of your energy and your focus on you.
And now that you've said this, I really want to bring this point up about we can get stuck in worrying about making a mistake. I would worry about falling on my head, falling out of a move, something new. What if it doesn't land well on stage? And somebody could be worried, their parents, if they're, younger, their parents are watching them. They could be worried that they're going to fail, make a mistake. A scout won't take them because they didn't play well that day. How can we get out of our heads focusing on perfectionism and focus on making progress instead?
Well, yeah, I mean, that is it, like focus on progress over perfection and realize we have to make a mindset shift that failure isn't fatal. Like failure is the best teacher you will ever have. And it's the most successful people, the most confident people that seek out failure. Because when you go out and you do something, you either get the outcome that you wanted or you get the lesson that you needed. And so when you fail, it's that teacher. It's like, hey, I went out, I did this, great. I failed. Now, what can I do? What can I learn from? And when we start to look at failure as a teacher and as like, honestly, the catalyst for a lot of things, I think that's when the change starts to happen with being so afraid to make mistakes and being so stuck in our heads. And that really is with the girls I work with, it really is the fear of mistakes, whether it's because, what are my parents going to think of me? What are my teammates going to think of me? My coaches, am I going to get pulled out? Am I going to get benched? And when you are constantly worried about mistakes, your energy, again, your thoughts, it's focused outside of you and you're not focused on what's inside. You're not focused in on your body and on the present moment. You're focused on the future of what if I mess up. But when you can start to realize that,
like, what if I drop my hearing aids in the toilet?
Right, exactly. And so when we start to normalize failure and accept failure and seek out failure, it just you just open up so much. It's literally like, for me, I felt like I was always trapped in my own body. But once I started to just like be okay with failure, I just felt so much more free and so much more at peace.
And
And
I
so, yeah.
love that, because that is embracing failure. I know the first time you guys hear this, and you may have heard it before and may still not have done it, but I'm a little older, a little wiser, and I can look back over my life and look at how all of these risks, because if you're afraid to fail, then you're afraid to take risks. And the only way you can move forward is taking risks. And the only way you get better to get to this place from this place is making some mistakes, because they're the best teacher. And it isn't really failure if you're learning something from it. And I mean, like, just doing this Bold TV, I learned you could be perfectly set up and everything could be perfect, and then your equipment could malfunction
Yeah.
after your camera test. And I felt like I've said this a few times. I felt like Lucille Ball at the Chocolate Factory. Everything was happening so fast. I had all these recipes to make, and I had to shoot it on my iPhone because my big
Yeah.
setup was not working. And so, like, I remember saying to myself, because I've learned, I said, you know what? That's okay, because
Yeah.
the next time I'm gonna nail it. And I did. So, like, it's just, I learned from that. Be extra prepared, not just
Yeah.
prepared.
And yeah, and that's the thing is even if you are extra prepared, there are still some things
There's
that
still
may
gonna be
break
something
down,
might go wrong.
right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes we create all these plans and it doesn't work out and it's just like we have to be okay with that.
I mean, I feel like I could show I feel like I could show the video on a talk and be like, "This is me. This was my failure."
I would love to see it.
It's so funny. But, I just think, like, people, if they recognize that embracing failure is the secret to success. I know that sounds weird
It
because
is.
nobody wants to fail, but once you're unafraid to fail, you're
Mhm.
going to win.
You're unstoppable, literally
Yeah,
unstoppable.
totally unstoppable. Wow, this has been so good today. I mean, so many things. I think I want to just go over again about the imposter syndrome, the
Mm.
not enoughness, the feeling of what if, this college has picked me, but then they realize I'm not good enough to play, whatever. I think this person is just feeling like they're gonna spot that I'm a fake, I'm a phony, I'm not really that good of a player.
Well, okay, so I think I'm not a parent, but I've been doing a lot of trying to learn about parents and how our childhood really shapes us. And I think that the not enoughness stems from our childhood a lot of the times. And the reason why is a lot of the time we as human beings are told that we are enough or feel like we're enough when we accomplish something, when we do something, when we're achieving something. But I think it needs to start with your like parents acknowledging your kids for who they are, not for what they're doing. Because when you only celebrate and acknowledge them for what they're doing, they only feel enough when they're doing that thing. They don't feel enough as a person, as a human being. They only feel enough when they're getting A's, doing the dishes, winning championships. So I think
Achieving,
that's where it starts
overachieving.
achieving. And we are human beings. So we need to appreciate and celebrate each other and ourselves for who we are as people, not for the things that we're doing, because that's outside of us. So I think that's where the whole I'm not enoughness stems from. When we're not doing enough, we feel like internally, I'm not enough as a person. And so I think it needs to change at an early age. And even if it's not an early age, we need to start to love ourselves and give ourselves grace and acknowledge ourselves for who we are as people. Because once we acknowledge ourselves and love ourselves for who we are, not for what we do, I think then the not enoughness, no matter what we do, will always feel like we're good enough.
So good. And I think many adults listening, you could think, wow, like, this not enoughness followed me from, childhood, high
Yeah.
school, college to adulthood. So I think it is really an important thing to talk about, to think about, and to work upon.
Yeah. And then imposter syndrome, right? Like I think everybody in their life has at one point or another experienced imposter syndrome. Like I've gone through it just in my professional career. Like, who am I to talk about confidence? Who am I to teach girls how to be more confident? I don't have a degree in psychology. Like I have questioned that myself. Who am I to be in the room with these people? Who am I to be talking to you? Right. And so I think that we all deal with it at times, but I think it comes back to not just thinking about your accomplishments all the time, but thinking about your experiences in your life and what you have to share as a human being. Like I may not have all the certifications, but I've gone through a lot in my life that I am able to then go and teach other people. So again, I think it all comes back to looking inside about who you are and the things that you have gone through in your life and how that makes you always enough to help yourself and to help other people.
I love that so much. That's really good. That's really powerful. What are some ways that we can respond to our failures and mistakes from a place of power?
That's a good one. First of all, acknowledging it. I think a lot of times when people think of moving on from failures, it's like we want to just forget about the failure. But if you forget about the failure, how are you going to learn from it? So acknowledging it and hey, being okay with feeling the emotions that come with failure. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to sit on the couch and eat ice cream for 10 minutes, but then it's time to
Not
get up.
10 years.
10 minutes, not 10 years, right? 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, depending on the failure. But no, it's really about acknowledging the failure and again, like giving yourself grace, acknowledging that it happened, being okay with the emotions that are involved in it, but then really coming from a place of power by looking at what happened and figuring out what can I do to have this not happen again? Or more importantly, who do I need to become to get better from this mistake, to get better from this failure, to move on from this and come out stronger than I was before? And
So good.
it's a lot of reflection. It's a lot of, again, who do I need to become? Not necessarily what do I need to do?
What are 5 actions we can instill to have a bulletproof mindset and build unshakable confidence?
I mean, Linda, like you did a phenomenal, like we literally went through pretty much all of them. So thoughts, I'm like, we hit them all, right? So it's the thoughts, change the way we're talking to ourselves. It's visualization. It's getting outside of your comfort zone and failing. And it's like taking action and doing really hard things. Because here's the thing, when we do hard things, we build trust with ourselves, we build credibility with ourselves. Because we all know those days when you say, I'm going to wake up early and you hit snooze, you don't feel very good about yourself, right? But then on the flip side, when you say, hey, I'm going to wake up early, I'm going to get my yoga in, and you do it, you're like, yes, like I feel great about myself. Like you keep the promises that you make to yourself, and that is so instrumental in building up trust and confidence and credibility with yourself. So that's kind of the other thing that I guess we didn't talk about that I would add into those actions is just doing hard things. And it's not like you have to succeed in doing them, you just have to do them.
So good. I feel like this has been power packed today with Shay. Tell us a little bit about your book and your course.
Yeah, so my book is called She the Confident. Linda, like you've cruised through. It's a really easy, short read though. And I've had 7-year-olds read it. I've had grandmas read it. So it really is a book for everyone, for all athletes. But in the book, we hit a lot of the things, but really gets into mindset and then all these confidence tools that you can use. And then my new program is called the Alpha Girl Collective. And I'm so excited for it. It's going to be this really awesome community of girls, of female athletes who are really looking to build unshakable confidence, who want a community to support them, who want mentorship, and who really just want to, create a beautiful life for themselves right now, but also learn the skills and tools that they need to live a confident life in their careers and in their families and beyond their sport.
And you weren't just born confident. It's a skill that you can develop at any age,
Yes.
anytime.
Absolutely. I love that we had that conversation on one of my calls yesterday. I said, is confidence a skill or a personality trait? And a lot of them said personality trait. I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm glad we're talking about this because it's a skill. Anyone can go from the lowest of lows in their confidence to the highest of highs, but it just takes practice.
So great. Leave me with one quote for everybody today.
All right, I got one on my wall. from RBG, but it's real change enduring change happens one step at a time. So whatever it is you're trying to do, you change your life, change the world, it happens with one step. So just start with one step.
Perfect. Great. This has been so amazing today. I really, really want to acknowledge you for being so actually vulnerable. You were actually a little bit vulnerable. And I really love your whole coaching style. And I'm glad you're still, even though not coaching soccer, that you're still coaching. You're in the coaching arena, because I feel like after reading your book, you make a really great coach.
Thank you, Linda. That means a lot to me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And thank you today, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Sisterhood of Sweat. Make sure to get Shay's book, check out our course, and as always, keep on keeping on.